What it is, what's up, and welcome everyone to Faces and Feels. I am your host, Raffe Houston, and today I am joined by a very special guest. He's a man known by many names and a couple of faces. It is the one and only Chainsaw Tony Myers, aka, why don't you just run them all down, because you were telling me the different names and there was like 100 of them.
Well, when Pogo first brought back the Leatherface gimmick, he was like, yeah, we'll have you come back as Leatherface. And I thought, man, aren't we going to like, and he agreed with me. He was like, yeah, let's modernize it up a bit. And he goes, okay, good name for you. This time, make it big, make a super, but I don't like a super, no. Remind them of before Leatherface. And he goes, Sin. I was like, Sin? I was like, Sheen, you mean like new, like Atalashi, like brand new Leatherface? And it just kept bouncing around to Sheen Leather, Sin. He likes Sin because, you know, he has Sin Church, you know, and it just kind of bounced around. And then I did the infamous thing with Onita where Onita doing the press conference said, we've had Leatherfaces in here before. This guy here, he's like, I knew that. That's old Tony Myers used to wrestle in Memphis under that, man. Because enough people out there were, you know, not heckling, but, you know, hey, Tony. Everybody knew who was under the man. I mean, you're not going to fool those sophisticated Tokyo, you know, love to stay on the internet wrestling fans. You're not going to confuse any of the people in Tokyo. So in a roundabout way, I mean, Jesus. Debuting there as one of the Uchu Meijin and Mummies, Demon Oyas, and all the other stuff that IWA Kokusai and Pro Wrestling Crusaders and all them had hanging around. You know, it's just, I bounced around with a lot of different names and kind of settled with this one lately, but I still do like several indies over in Japan where it's just Tony Myers.
Yeah, right.
That's it.
They forget the leather part.
Yeah. I told you, like, we started to have a conversation before we went on the air, and I was like, I'll just repeat what I said because I just find so much of it fascinating. And now I know what to edit out, you know, so I don't ramble too much. But I said, wait, all the different gimmicks in Memphis or just Japan? Because Memphis, there was a whole bunch of them too.
Exactly. You just started listing names, and I was like, I'm just going to let you do it.
Yeah. Well, Memphis was Super Hysteria, Dr. Death, the Wolverine. I mean,
the Wolverine. That's awesome, man. And this is why I think this is going to be such an interesting conversation, because it's just such a career that spanned so many different, you know, iterations and things like that, and different places. I just think it's fascinating. So before we get into any of that, let's rewind back, like we were saying. We'll go all the way back to when you were first exposed to professional wrestling. What were some of the first, you know, faces that stood out to you in pro wrestling?
Well, it was always my family because I grew up in Jersey, and my parents still live there. My sister, my brother. So getting exposed to WWF and that whole Madison Square Garden network, but the independents would pop up on cable TV, and you were like, whoa! And when you start collecting the magazines, you were like, wow, there's wrestling in other places. So, you know, I had to find like all the weird, obscure, smaller, bizarre ones. Cause it's like, for these guys, it made me wonder so much, like, do these guys have another job? Like, what is it that these guys, where did these people come from? And what made them drift to a wrestling school to make them train? So, and then, you know, I started finding area independents all around Jersey, and that's when I got like really fascinated.
Yeah, that's right. So like going to shows and things. How old were you when you first saw like your first independent show in person?
Well, like they had the old WWF like C shows where like the Conquistadors would main event against the Killer Bees, and stuff like that. They always had like maybe like Adrian Adonis and Don Morocco against like Paul Orndorff and Uncle Elmer or something, you know, like that would be like a C show main event.
Yeah.
And then from there, like I said, I'd find out about independent shows, magazines and stuff, and you could write in back then, or sometimes they had a phone number. The Savaldis ran like 2 towns over from me, and there were other area independents, and one by one you just start getting hooked, because I was maybe 13, 14 years old, and I started collecting like ring jackets, and I started walking around seeing if there was anything I could do to be a part of it.
Mhm. That's cool. You just wanted to like invest your time and immerse yourself in the entire situation.
Yeah, because you just got more fast. Like, oh, that guy must be somebody. Wow, Big Sweet William. He just wrestled SD Jones. That must, he's like a real wrestler. What's, and then years later, his was one of the schools I had attended and went to,
Mhm.
Lodi, New Jersey, in a racquetball court.
I was going
So
to ask you,
it's so
how do you even find a school? You know?
well. First, in all the magazines, all I heard about was the Monster Factory.
Mhm.
So everything was Monster Factory. So it was down in Flemington, New Jersey. I went down there and I saw both the Spiders will go on to be the Headbangers,
Mhm.
but Charlie Fulton was the original trainer. When I went up there, I was like 15 years old.
Mhm.
I just wandered into the place like, is there anything I could do to be a part of this? And I just poured out, I'll be the referee.
Mhm.
And Larry Sharp, back then, he's like, I'm not, he's like, I'm not going to take nobody's money. He's like, you are entirely too small. Walking up there like at 5'2" and 95 pounds, coming out of the eighth grade.
Yeah.
It was like, what could you possibly do here? But, eased into it and just, started, somebody let me to start taking bumps. And, um, from there, Gino Caruso, to this day is still running ECPW. It was originally Mike Masters, Rocky Jones. He was always in the openers in Madison Square Garden in the late 70s.
Mhm.
Mike Masters always opened up against like Jose Luis Rivera or Jose Estrada, or he had many matches with like Johnny Rods. But I found his school next, and by then Iron Mike Sharps in Brick Township, New Jersey, have been up and going. So
Mhm.
I was like, between all four of them, later on it would just be a lot of that place that's still there now, ECPW, which is still there to this day because it was only like 5-10 minutes away
Mhm.
from where I grew up. So, it was just bouncing around all four of them, like just doing whatever you could to get noticed. There was small lucha libre showed, all over the five boroughs in New York City. So, there were things like that. There was so many of those things that went on that were undocumented.
Mhm.
Um, but there was always like tiny independents all over the place. You really had to find them. You really had to talk to people.
Just out there networking and stuff. Kind of a lot like you, you do still, like with all the various independents in Japan and things like that. It's that, ongoing network of shows and the
It's
interjoining community.
it's all your friends and their friends, and it
Mhm.
just doesn't end. If it's out there and you want it and you want a part of it, and I mean, it's been some years for me over there. I mean, debuting in '94, it's been such a long time to establish these kind of like friendships with all these people, and it's funny because the same people that, the old expression from Terry Funk, he said, you know, don't do you treat these young boys good because someday they're going to be your boss, and that has lived to happen
Yeah, exactly.
completely.
So you mentioned Memphis. How do you start, like, as you start to train, you start to take a few bumps and you start to, book indie shows and stuff. How do you get over there?
Dennis Carluzzo and Tri-State Wrestling both were bringing in Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler, and I was a huge Memphis fan.
Mhm.
So I went on my way to go down there and start helping Eddie Gilbert with his bags or anything I could. And then I started making Eddie like 8-hour VHS tapes, which this so dates itself because so much has changed. But I started making like 8-hour VHS tapes and giving them to Eddie Gilbert, like compilations of him from like Continental,
Mhm.
all over the place. And he was like, "My God, you found stuff I didn't even know existed."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Yeah, I'm an avid tape trader, And
Yeah.
um, so with that, and me bothering Jerry Lawler every time Dennis Carluzzo would book him, or Tri-State Wrestling would book Jerry Lawler, Joel Goodhart before Todd Gordon took over ECW and they changed the name and everything.
Mhm.
Um, so I was going up there just to try to referee some of the earliest ECW, before they were Extreme, and
Mhm.
just trying to get a foot in the door
Mhm.
just by being around, running around back there. And,
Mhm.
you know, It's like the helping. I remember one time Sabu just kind of looking. He's like, no, 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 I got it. My uncle insists. And I'm like, oh man, I'm just trying to haul the Sheik's bags into the ECW arena,
I was recently watching those Tales from the Territory shows. Have you seen those before?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which are
I
great.
wish to
All the
God
stories
more
at Memphis.
people understood. If people only understood the mystique of the territories.
Yeah, those
I'm
shows
sorry,
are
I just
great.
talked completely over you.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, no. It's fine. There's no rules on this show. It's just a couple of boys talking shit. But I love those shows because it's exactly that, right? It's them just talking about, crazy things that happened and interactions with fans and, fights and like, all this stuff because like then kayfabe was very real and people took it pretty serious and they were on TV and there was real money and stuff and it was fucking nuts.
Yeah, if people only understood the mystique of the territories and all the, everything that went on with it. The first full time, Memphis was on its ass, and it had a couple bright spots there toward the end.
Mm-hmm.
The Smoky Mountain feud when they brought in the ECW guys, but the territory was on its tail end ass. But I was still able to eke out a living,
Mm-hmm.
6-7 days of the week. Eventually, I got handed the responsibility of holding the ring because Harvey Whippleman in downtown Bruno was starting up as a full-time referee in the WWF.
Mm-hmm.
And he had showed me how to put up that ring and take it down a billion times. So, um, but I was still able to eke out a living. And I knew that at the time I was like, I'm just happy for that,
Yeah.
like, I have to have a regular job. I don't have to go to work anywhere. Like I wake up and I just each day worry about wrestling stuff,
Yeah.
and, but yeah, that all became because, between Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler, I think they just got sick and tired of me saying, I'm coming down. I remember it's like 1991.
Mm-hmm.
I, was just getting a license and everything. And I remember making that drive all the way from Jersey to Memphis just to get squashed on TV and drive all the way back up to Jersey. But
How
and I
far
didn't
is
really
that? I'm
have the
not good
right
at my
training back.
my like USA geography. Like how far is that
One
drive?
1,080 miles. It always took me 16 hours driving to make
Jeez.
it the whole way there. One way,
Fucking hell. That's insane, dude.
That was
That's
gas $1 a gallon. That's not so bad back then.
yeah. Still a slog, man. Still an absolute slog.
Yeah. It's a sacrifice and everything else, but at the time I really hadn't paid all my wrestling tuition
Mm-hmm.
to all these different places. Like if I went to Mike Sharp's, I'd be charged like $8 a workout.
Yeah.
And like build them on it would be like, all right, anybody new that comes in here, you got to help try to train them. And I wasn't really that trained myself, but we had a guy named Special K, Keith Scherer, who was there, who trained the majority of guys
Mm-hmm.
showing up there looking to, and then the same thing pretty much happened with ECPW. It was like, well, just keep working out with the people and don't worry about the rest of the money that's owed here, because by then I was getting booked on some of the smaller indie shows around Jersey and New York and that kind of thing. I mean, every once in a while, those places I just mentioned, all of them, they'd run their own house shows. They'd run once a month right there at the school. So, so much has changed since then that it's just it's impossible to put a finger on it and say like, oh, nowadays it just so much has changed. It's like to me, for anybody out there that looks at a smaller crowd, and I said this to you in a private conversation, it truly goes to show you who has a real clue as to their business behind wrestling. They look out there and they see a small crowd. And this happens a lot in Japan. And they go, oh, well, those boys are doing it for nothing, or they wrestle for very little money. They don't know. There's a lot of times it's a bought show. There's sponsorship behind it. There's all kinds of just. And nowadays, more and more people are getting smartened up to the word sponsor because it's more out in the open here. You could sponsor a wrestler, I heard, to have matches and stuff. But in Japan, it's just a completely different story. I mean, half the time, some of the small groups that run at a Magic Box Pro in their building, you see constantly on weekends and especially throughout the week, you'll see it too. Guys will just do their own produce show, production of, and it'll be like one of the heels on the undercard that'll get away and say, "Hey, I'm running my house show this week," and the warmer it gets outside, they'll put it up outdoors.
Mhm.
But I mean that smaller building that they had moved to, as in Hanjo, I mean, it's like less than 5 miles from the last one was. And
Mhm.
that was like a humongous arena. But once COVID happened, the place just lost too much money that the sponsor said, let's cut back and go to a smaller building.
Mhm.
And they're running more now in that tiny little building than ever before.
Yeah. Well,
I could not
sometimes
believe
that adds to the vibe, right? Like that, it becomes like something a little bit more exclusive and a little bit more different, and then that catches on.
Yeah, I was just blown away by how many of the guys, the undercard guys, even some of the guys in the main events,
Mhm.
just pick and choose to run randomly in Hanjo at that same building
Yeah.
and just run a different company. And
Mhm.
it's weird because you see all different fans. You're like, man, there really is something for everyone out there. Like,
Yeah.
like the boys inherently should be like forced to run at least one house show by themselves
Mhm.
just to see how it feels of like the pressures that are put on a promotion from this, that, and the other, and keeping everybody happy and all that stuff.
Mhm. Absolutely.
But
Perspective.
you see it brought to life in Japan, and you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like it seems like everybody owns their own Fed, and it seems like that here in America too. But
Mhm.
fans have to see about a product, and if it's what they like. But these people don't know. The majority of people out there buying tickets, they don't know,
Mhm.
or hope for the best that it's not a fad thing, that people aren't just attached to it for the time being, and that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the nature of society these days, isn't it? Everything comes and goes in waves. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And too much so nowadays. Like
Mhm.
it's more of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of a mentality of just being, like TikTok is perfect.
Mhm.
After a few seconds you don't like it, you're on to the next one.
Yeah.
It's society everywhere is becoming more and more
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Instant gratification, which that's what happens when we evolve.
Yeah.
you know?
I think with wrestling and with promotions and stuff, the ones that you see be the most successful, or the individuals, like individual promoters and stuff that you see the most successful, are the ones that sort of understand that and are good at dodging and weaving and changing it up and doing different things and stuff. And you're like, oh, there's been several promotions, but it's all like the same person. You know what I mean? Like actually
Oh yeah.
rolling and adapting with what's going on.
I didn't understand when I was breaking into Japan that two of those people, one of them was Kenji Takano, the brother of George Takano.
Mhm.
The Cobra. You ever see the Cobra versus the
No.
classic matches that you would see like light heavyweight
Mm.
matches, WWF back from the like early '80s.
Mhm.
The other was his brother, his brother George Takano, and George and Kenji started up Pro Wrestling Crusaders, and they had, it caught fire. The whole Uchu Meijin thing, KY Wakamatsu, and his team of guys, the alien invaders from outer space. He did the same thing with the super strong machine and all them back in like New Japan in the mid '80s. You
Mhm.
remember
Yeah, I remember that.
he had a bullhorn out there like Jimmy Hart, and he was
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and it was the whole reinvention of that and Pro Wrestling Crusaders. That was like a major independent with backing, and you know uh, between them and Go Ryuma. Go Ryuma had so many. Oh my God! Every time you wrestled for him, he'd have another company. He'd have financing and major backing. There were some crowds there. I
Yeah.
mean, but then the majority of those crowds there were just really just went there to heckle it because they thought it was so terrible that the undercard was just atrocious, and it wasn't enough to get fans to come back. But it's just such a strange story of the whole Uchu Meijin thing catching on, and then guys having fallen outs, and Union Pro was supposed to be the one to bring all these different little indies together, but they had a falling out, so everybody had their own sets of tag teams.
It's absolutely cool. When you mentioned like when you started to break into Japan, like how do you? We're even talking. We're talking a little bit in the past now, so social media isn't quite what it was today. How does that even begin? Like where we sort of left off in your journey, you were driving a truck in Memphis. So how do you end up starting to make connections and travel to like a completely different country that speaks a completely different language?
Yeah, what had happened was I wasn't even given the truck by then. By then, Buddy Wayne was still hauling the ring, and
Mm.
this is before Buddy had quit. And then Jerry bought his own ring, and then Jerry just had people like Bruno, and then eventually his cousin Carl Fergie was hauling the ring and pulling the double duty wrestling as Mister Wrestling under a mask and that kind of thing. Um, and so in the midst of this, Eddie Gilbert gets into Wing and opened some eyes, and not only that, I was still in touch a bit with Bill DeMont,
Mhm.
who, I told you about. He was Crash the Terminator. Him and Pogo, I think, were the first tag champions of Wing.
Yeah, well,
So between both of those things, and I thought I was getting over to Japan because I was good or something. Really, it's just like Eddie Gilbert just, I mean, who are you going to have to do a job? Why not this guy? Just stick a hood over his head or
yeah.
whatever. And
Mhm.
but through this, Eddie Gilbert had left Wing under bad circumstances, and then it was just kind of like, oh, dead end. But I was still in touch. Was still in touch with Bill DeMott and was still in touch with Pogo. Like that's when I first started to hear about Pogo, started to know about him. And by the time I got to Japan, because they had sent me tickets already, it was some kind of mix up. So by the time I got to Japan, Pogo had felt so bad for me. He told his old buddy Go Ryuma, hey, this guy from America's coming in here. You could probably have him wrestle under a few masks or something. He was like, he kind of felt partially responsible because he was one of the guys too that he wanted to get the office position in Japan. So I guess that's when I came up on the radar and
Mhm.
between him and Bill DeMont. And, I get there and Eddie Gilbert's long gone from Wing.
Mhm.
And I'm just kind of standing there by myself, like, what the hell do I do?
Like, why the fuck am I
I
here?
remember,
Yeah.
yeah. And I remember like all during this, like, I took it as I could get it, but I met other guys and they were guys that were trainees that Goro Sarumi brought with them from his IWA Kokusai, because that had branched off. He had split from PWC, even though the Uchu Meijin thing was his idea. It's like still they just needed bodies, and then landing in IWA Kokusai, I was like, holy shit, like this entire crew works two or three different times under different masks. And
Yeah.
they put them in this netting afterwards. And either they would tell you, you're booked on the next one, so bring the stuff back washed, or they would tell you, leave it here
Yeah.
if you weren't booked on anything else. So it was just, through those smaller independents. But and then I met the guys like Survival Tobita and everybody else that was running their own stuff. And I just established a friendship with them. But
Mhm.
it was hard for me because if you're going to fly me in, you got to use me as much as you could possibly,
Yeah.
because I was doing the same thing in Memphis, wrestling under different masks, pulling double duty on shows,
Mhm.
a lot of the house shows, everything like that.
Mhm.
So it was like, oh, here's a big heavy set American guy. He'll take a bunch of bumps. Oh, okay. Let's have him do the fourth and semi main event.
Mhm.
we just we need somebody that's gonna be big, take the bumps, and and be willing to put anybody over
Mhm.
and not argue.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And I
That's
mean,
all
I mean, your
before.
physical size is going to set you apart in that situation, right? Where it's like, everybody's filed into the venue or whatever, and you're doing mass wrestling and things like that. And we're like, well, that's the body type we need. There we go. He'll do it. That's fine.
Yeah, not only that, I didn't realize at the time too. It was costing them less in taxes. Instead of paying two, three different people or whatever, especially a foreigner that you got. And you'd always bump into other foreigners there, and you're like, this is just, you know, um, take like the late Go Ryuma.
Mhm.
Um, Ryuma Go would bring in like all the guys from Portland and everything like that, but they were all like bodybuilders and stuff.
Hmm.
So it looked that much more impressive when he was. It was even in like Foley's book when he says, you know, it was Go Ryuma wrestling against all these Americans dressed up as like invading outer space aliens and stuff. And really, no, it was Hatakana, Goro Surumi, me. It was Yaguchi at one point. I guess he saw the blonde hair and figured that he was American. I don't know, but um, it was just such a weird journey. It was a journey like my foot in the door in Japan, starting out like that, and then just being kind of like the utility guy. And Pogo, at least one time, had told me, I'm going to get my own Fed one day. And that's in 2000. He bought out the rights to the old wing promotion. And almost right away, when I was with Pogo, he put up posters, run around, having to spell things out to him in English and everything because his English isn't very good.
Hmm.
And people were sending him stuff to be signed, like to be shipped back to Puerto Rico, all over the world.
Hmm.
I've met some real people to this day that are like my better friends. I met them while working in Pogo's office because we had to send him a T-shirt to the UK or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's really yeah, he wrestled so many places all over this world that stuff was always coming in for him to sign, or
Mhm.
people wanting to buy his DVDs or any way they could support him and see what his product was.
Mhm.
So um, but that wasn't until 2000. So there was that 6 years that went on and on with the independents in Japan, and just trying to get a foot in the door. And
Mhm. Were you staying there
then
for long periods of time then? Like when you were first brought in and you first step off the plane, how long had they asked you to come for? Like where were you staying? What was happening?
it had only been like a week and a half, and I didn't realize this. This was everybody went out and got their own indie because of the success of Onita and FMW.
Hmm.
So everybody was trying to be the next Onita.
Yeah.
And in the midst of this, when they would bring in Goro Surumi as a guest to one of his shows and have Goro Surumi wrestle one of his guys and bring along a couple of his guys, that's how I crossed paths with Onita. And that was like mid 90s. And I asked him, and he was like, I don't even remember that. And I'm like, how could you? How could you? It was the mid 90s. I mean, you've seen it. You've seen the Onita stuff.
Yeah.
But he saw throughout the years my loyalty to Pogo. And when Pogo passed, I think that was the final straw for Onita, where he's like, come on, you're with us now.
Yeah.
And he was already bringing me around to a bunch of stuff because, like, at one point when Pogo had got really sick, Onita was like, or Pogo had told me, whatever you do, I don't mind how much, that you're going on the road with him, whatever. He's like, but your number one priority is WWS and Wing World, World Wing Spirit.
Yeah.
And I was like, amen. I hear you.
Hmm.
I would tell that to Onita, and he would kind of half roll his eyes. He'd be like, all right, all right.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Pogo and your friendship. So you start in Japan and it's just indies and stuff. How do you go? And you were saying he felt a little bit bad. He was trying to get you onto stuff. How did that friendship develop? Because, like you said, his English wasn't super good at the start and stuff. So you guys who essentially
It
speak
was
different languages, like how are you hanging out?
his English.
Mhm.
His English was really good actually
Oh, was it?
because he's he spent all that time working for the Crockett's and then out in
Ah.
Calgary for Stu Hart and the Funks down in Amarillo. So English had been burned into him by then,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and two, it was also as the years went on, like when Tadashi Tanaka found his ex. That's like the mother of his kid from America.
Mhm.
And so, she would talk with him in his English. When I would go periods without speaking English to him, his English would start slipping like real bad.
Mhm.
And like, we would do exercises where I would have to speak to him in Japanese and he'd have to respond in English.
Mhm.
We just work on each other's
Train each
languages.
other.
And
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, he would bust ball. He was a ball buster, but um, I want to say the last 3 or 4 years of his life mainly is when I started moving in with him and just started cleaning up the place. It was hard for him to get up and down and do things. And then he had the surgeries and everything. So, the last 3-4 years of his life is when we got really tight.
Yeah.
And me, Takase, his ring announcer, Ramen Man was like one of his best buddies. He financed so much of WWS because Pogo was running all kinds of house shows that never, when you look at match results, some of them aren't even there.
Yeah.
But he was running at least with WWS, he was running at least 3-4 times a month, at least.
Yeah. Well.
He was running his no ring shows, which could be in anything from a gentleman's club or like an office building. Those are just randomly. And then Miss Mongol was running his CTE for him. Not to mention, the boys would find WWS, places, locations, groups that wanted to raise money, fundraisers, all kinds of things. So and WWS constantly stayed busy. And then he would build to like his 3 or 4, he had at least 4 major shows in Isesaki City each year. And he would go to Kumagaya and Gunma. He would go to Kumagaya and Kagahara, which were kind of close to each other. He would go to those like at least twice a year. And man, he would draw a couple thousand people.
Wow.
You see the old DVDs and you're like, for an indie to do 2,000 people on a random Sunday is just, and I've seen him crack 2,000 people without Onita on the card.
Yeah, wow.
They did the math one time. They were looking at each other. They realized they could do $250,000 on any weekend, just wrestling each other in just random matches.
That's crazy. That's how you know you're onto something, okay?
Between the merch, between sponsors, between this, between that, between the video itself or DVD put out or any of that stuff. That money piles up fast. And they could, make all kinds of crazy money. The money Onita would make in merchandise alone at Pogo shows was like ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Pogo being a heel for his own Fed, the money he would do in merch, the DVDs that they would sell and the T-shirts and everything was like, you would stand back and go, holy mackerel. Like,
just pumping.
He would tell me once in a while, he'd be like, oh, I barely broke even on that show. And I would do the math in my own head and be like, no way.
It's working, yeah.
I was like, unless you're paying these guys $500 a piece, no way.
Yeah.
If you drew 80 people, you're charging $75 for a seat. And there is no general admission on some of the shows that he did. So on some of it, you'd be like, where's this money coming from? Or you never knew. But, it could be from anything, too. Not anything that's bad or anything like that. It's just, well, there's money for it to keep going.
Yeah.
So.
Keep going back into itself. When it started up, like you said, when he first bought Wing, did he like immediately had his own vision for it, right? Like the way I understand it, I'm not overly familiar with like the real old tapes and stuff like that, but the vibe and bringing in the horror characters and all that stuff, that was all his sort of vision for the promotion, wasn't it?
Yeah, because he wanted the book anyway. He wanted some of the ownership of Wing when he was the top heel before, because he saw, my ideas are working here, and the rest of it's just a struggle because I got all these office people in my way that won't let me do it the way I want to do it.
Sure.
And he was like, if we just turn loose this, that, and the other. And it's so funny because in the following years, all of his ideas with Matsunaga, with Kanamura, would draw like a couple thousand people when they built it up. They do like 1,500 people in Isesaki City. And that's charging ridiculous money. General admission on some of those shows was at least like $75 for a ticket.
Yeah, Chase.
And so, yeah, and so he drew money with him. He drew money with Kanemaru. He constantly drew money with Onita on top in 8-mans, 6-mans, whatever. But he just wanted Wing to continue and say, hey, This would have been what Wing is like if we had the financing. And that's where, Ramen Man was one of his best buddies. Ramen Man was coming to the ring with Pogo all the way back in the day when Wing was running. You see Ramen Man as one of the young boys behind them coming to the
Yeah,
ring with
right.
him.
Just there the whole time.
Pogo is just like Onita. He always had to have like an army. He always had to have a bunch of guys with him. He always
Entourage.
had to have like, yeah, he always had to have like a whole flock with him. Wherever he goes, there's like a whole entire, and that's the way it is to this day with Onita.
Yeah.
There's been many times where he's like, oh, hey, we'll square up on money later. Like when he says that, I know I'm good. Cool. I'm getting paid for that.
Uh-huh.
Whatever it is, wherever you're going, wherever you're wrestling, um, whether you're on the set for a commercial with him, whatever, you're being taken care of.
Yeah.
He's getting a lump sum of money and he's taking care of you out of that.
Yeah. Well, we
That's
talked about
why,
this before, like the loyalty, within Japanese wrestling and like, between you and Pogo, between you and Onita and stuff. You said it's still really real there. Like wrestling can be a pretty carny place, but with those guys, it's like once you're there and there's like a trust between you, that's like a very real thing, right?
yeah, I mean, even temporarily, when you fall out with them over something or something petty, it's not one of those like falling outs. Like, I'm not speaking to you again.
Yeah.
So one hand always wash the other. They had to have somebody else to do the other stuff around them because they didn't speak English, and they would come up with English titles to shows, and then come up to me and be like, "Is this all right?" Or they would come out with like a line of DVDs and be like, "We need you to do English commentary on these."
Yeah.
So that there was always something,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, FMWE now, Onita's latest FMW, it doesn't even have like an office and an office staff. Your office, you know that your office for the company, you know by your responsibilities what you have to do, but it doesn't have like an office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ogle had that. Magic Box Pro still has that. It's when Bogle passed. I mean, when WWS just it slid on down because with FMWE coming back and especially with Magic Box Pro being so close to WWS, it was only 45 minutes. And then those two had fallen out. And it was like WWS in the office was saying, if you work for Magic Box Pro, and I was like, listen, it doesn't matter because I'm with WWS no matter what. Many years I put in, I held their heavyweight title with no mask, no nothing. And like 2016, it's like, so there's always a piece of me there no matter what. And then it's like, well, you must be talking to those other people because I freelance. That's what I do. But it's the guys like Naoshi Sano and guys like Boomba who were really, especially Boomba. He put up all kinds of posters. He did all kinds of work for Pogo's office. So, he's like, you're not going to tell me as a freelancer to go here, go there. And he's like, he's got a regular job where he makes a ton of money. And he still does the professional boxing. So it's like, you're not going to tell a guy like that where to go.
No.
You're not going to tell Miss Mongol, which was one of the things where WWF started going downhill, was Miss Mongol ran their catfight shows. They would always have like 2 or 3 professional matches, even though they were conducted on mats. They would always have like Pogo in a match or Takase and me under different mats against each other. Like it would always have something there. And it's like, I guess they gave her an ultimatum and she's like, that's fine. I'll take my CTE. I'll take my cat fighting fed with me. So, she was using WWS guys.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't keep segregating and expecting, more or newer fans to be reached out in the base. Like, you're better off. You had no other building to run during the pandemic. So they were doing all the WWF stuff in Magic Box Pro's old building, where you're talking millions of dollars for a state-of-the-line, facility. But what had happened was with COVID and everything, it all crashed down at once. And then the president of the company too. He's been fighting stomach cancer the last like 6 years, 5, 6 years.
Horrible.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, you hate to see falling outs and that kind of thing, but being a freelancer, there's it. Even if even if WWS did not book me, I'd still be there with Onita.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Taka Say to this day is still one of my best buddies, and he's the owner, operator, and ace. I mean, and then when he took over, when he bought out the half from Ramen Man of WWS, of the new wing, it was just like your top babyface, you're in all the main events, and you're still the champion when you got the belt from me. It's like
I was going to say, I think you had mentioned before, like the current owner, like you said, Ace and Champion. He won the title from you, right? Like from during your run, and then he's held it ever since. Like it's been years.
Yeah, it's been 6, 7 years.
7 years. What a run!
I think one time he dropped it to Toryu, Magnitude Kashiwada. He dropped it to him for like a few months or whatever, but he went right back to being champion. And everybody's like, oh, but why not make the title mean even more by putting it on one of the other guys? This way, yeah, your main event will be Onita and a death match and everybody beating each other up and barbed wire. And, Shimada will always be in the main events too because, he was great Pogo. Pogo's right-hand man. And it's his ring. So on top of everything else, it's just like, does it really have to be all this complication? Does it really have to be this much of a mess?
Yeah.
Like, can't it be just like you go your way, I go mine? Like, instead of forbidding somebody to do this, telling someone you can't be on that, you can't be booked by them if you're booked by us.
Yeah,
you're an independent, you're a freelancer.
Yeah, I don't have a contract.
Once in a while you'll find that in Tokyo, and it's just like, what are you talking about? It's like, it's the exact same concept, the exact same promotion, pretty much, and the exact same, chains for ropes on the ring, submission wrestling, and it's like it's in the same building.
Yeah.
So I don't care that you two had a falling out. Like, I'll wrestle for him, like I'll wrestle for you.
Yeah.
If you don't want to use me because he's got me booked, okay, I'll just find work elsewhere. Like, it doesn't. There's a number one place. Now Shisano's Bar, Stanley Club. All night long, you see a never-ending loop of promoters, wrestlers, everybody coming in there, dropping off their tickets, posters, tickets to be sold at his place. Like, it's a never-ending revolving door. So that's why I always go to that bar. It's like, if I have an off day here, an off day there, I'll run into somebody and be like, hey, you run on this date?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow, are you busy? What do you want me to do, man? You want me to bring, and then we start talking money or whatever. And I'm like, sit down, I have a few beers. What's a couple beers if I could get a few $100 a night to wrestle for you?
Yeah.
It's like, we're enjoying our beers. We still love wrestling. And I'm going to go to work for you. I'm going to give you a hand wherever you fucking need it. I'll do podcasts over there. I'll do radio, whatever you want me to do to help push the product. And let's get some people out there,
Yeah. That's awesome. It's knowing the ropes, Let's quickly rewind back to your wing title run, just because I thought that was interesting, because you were obviously brought in and, you were doing, like we said, the Leatherface stuff and the horror characters and all and different masks. Tell me about the thought behind when they demasked you and you went on that title run, like, as Tony Myers. I've seen pictures of you, in the suit with the belt and stuff like that. That was obviously like, like a corporate, Tony Myers kind of thing. Tell me about the entire
story. The funniest part about that is if you look at the shoes I'm wearing boots. I'm wearing the Leatherface boots. So not too many people caught on to that.
Yeah.
And other people are like, you're wearing boots with a suit? And it's like, oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Leatherface wears a suit anyway, including a jacket and tie to the ring.
It's the
It's
same
like
stuff.
you don't get it. It's like, but we went to do all that. There's several matches I had like in 2014 where he's just like Tony Myers in this 6 man, and Jason was with Sadist, who was with Kenji, and they all had like the horror mask and everything. So it was like a new way to go for me.
Mhm.
And then he put me with them, and he was like, "Well, it doesn't matter because you have the crazy hair and you're always doing like the barking, like Bruiser Brody, like you're just kicking people and beating them up and hurting them." So,
Mhm.
um, his idea was to show mostly to the boys that when you drop all the gimmick and everything, it's like, well, it's Tony Myers anyway.
Mhm.
So it was like for all the masks, for all the different identities, for all the everything. When he said you're going to be at the helm of the ship and you're going to be our heavyweight champion,
Mhm.
and then he even at one point, I have old posters of it. He even sent me out there to the Philippines, and it was just like
Really?
what, you know. Um, for a while there, I had a bunch of pictures of going into Taipei. And
Mhm.
it was just like, are these people even? And they were all like shoot wrestlers.
Yeah.
Pogo's like, it doesn't matter. Just get him to get enough pictures of you grappling with somebody. And I'm like, it's going to beat me for the belt. He's like, no, no, it's all exhibition stuff.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh, thank God. But then it got like ruling too because he would bring in like kickboxers and jujitsu guys
Yeah.
that didn't know anything at all about working. And I'm like, how the hell do you want me to survive this? And he's like, oh, put up your hands. I'm like,
What?
or the one time he booked me of all people, and he uses Yoshiaki Fujiwara. He uses him like that guy has been in death matches with me.
Yeah.
Like he's just dressed up in like regular like street clothing, but you're looking at him and you're like, Yoshiaki Fujiwara, for Christ's sake. He trained Bad News Brown.
Mhm.
He like it's what more can you possibly say about the guy? A
Yeah.
few months ago, he was on New Japan and like slapped the shit out of Tetsuya Naito. So it's like he's still old and feared,
Yeah.
and he's like early 70s now.
Mhm.
They would do that with Gran Hamada. Gran Hamada would be in like 6 man death matches, and you're
Mhm.
like, it's kind of weird. But it was the whole weird novelty of like Onita teaming up with Fujiwara.
Mhm.
Whoever thought that would happen?
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, his idea was when you get rid of all the gimmicks and everything else, he's like, the guy is Tony Myers anyway.
Yeah. He's a
And
good
so
wrestler. There's a reason why he's here. Like, I trust
and
him
there
to see
was
this through.
there was too the whole thing where Pogo's like, we have no foreigners booked. He was like, even the people, he's like, even you as a foreigner, what are we doing with you under a mask?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. He's like, it'll give it more of an international presence. He said, besides, this is at the time where I moved in with him to like help him because I got tired of like getting on the train from Winnow, going 3 hours all the way to Gunma.
Mhm.
It's Sasaki City where he lived.
Yeah.
So eventually I just started spending the night. And then I was like, well, let me go get all my shit from the hotel. And because I didn't want the hotel to cost him a fortune or he just put me up in Winnow.
Yeah.
And I even told him to save him money. I was like, I'll stay in a capsule. And he goes, now, if anybody sees you on the street and they've seen Occupation of the Indies or any of the coverage, they know you're the heavyweight champion. And he's like, it's too low rent. And then eventually he needed enough help getting around to where, I just moved in with him.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, yeah, so then in 2000, I want to say 14 or 2015, I told him, I said, hey, man, I still got the old Southern heavyweight title. He's like, the belt, like a belt itself? And I go, yeah. And he goes, because we would always do video chats. So when I got back to the States, he's like, let me see that belt you were telling me about.
Mhm.
I held it up and he was like, do you think it was his idea? And he goes, do you think you could bring that? And one of the first things he said was, do you own this belt or do you owe people money? He's like, I'm not taking this belt if you owe anybody. I was like, man, when have you ever seen or heard about me owing anybody money? I don't owe anybody shit. So I didn't know if I could curse on here or not, but
Yeah, you
sorry about
definitely
that.
fucking can.
All right, fuck it then. I'll never forget the one time my face was so sore, and he had this guy. It was one of Boomba's friends, and it was a professional boxer. So I was gonna have to take a couple shots, and I knew it. And I was like, otherwise, this match is gonna suck anyway. If it's just me dragging him down to the mat and trying to tie him up, you know. So I remember getting off the train, and people never do this in Japan. For some reason, I was so happy. I had the belt in my bag. All my gear was left at Pogo's because I didn't have to go back and for another couple days.
Mhm.
And I just remember being like, wow, and just running around on the train with a belt, like, fuck yeah, I'm still champ, man. But yeah, then it got to the point where he was like, all right, now that has like that international presence, he's like, because stateside, I was doing this whole thing with a guy that I knew for about 20 years. Back in 1999, when I had the same belt,
Mhm.
he ran his own like independent up in Connecticut. So we had a whole program for that old Southern heavyweight title from that I brought with me from Memphis to
Mhm.
there. And he was really getting on to me about I'm the real Connecticut heavyweight champion. I never lost that belt, you know, because I was able to take like paper and cover over just some of the lettering and it's still a real cool belt that was designed after the old Intercontinental title.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard of David Milliken, it was David Milliken and a guy who has recently passed named Don Kelly, Kelly Mayfield, who was Donnie Denton. David Webb, David Denton's younger brother on Independence all around Memphis. That was one of the first belts they ever made on a lathe. And look at where David Milliken is now. So, um, and telling me who he's going to drop the belt to, I'm like, this is perfect because since 2000, since you started up WWS, me and Takase, I remember on one show, I'm not kidding. I just went into the ring and they're like, X. And I'm like, all right, I'm X. I was in all black and everything. And then Takase comes out and they go, El Diablo Dos. And I was like, El Diablo Dos. You're not even wearing anything red. How the hell are you a Diablo? Um, and then I remember he came out as Sunshine and he was wearing a yellow mask. And then I wrestled him as Tony Myers. And then he wrestles me as Takase. And I come back out and I had the original, like one of the original Uchu Meijin things. So I just wore the hockey mask and my regular singlet. And I climb in the ring and they're like, El Loco Tres. And I'm like, El Loco, the third El Loco. Where's the first two? Like, where do you come up with this? He's like,
They just make it
Pogo
up
would
on the
just be like,
spot.
Pogo would just be like, just, you know, speak some Spanish. Easy for him to do. He lived in Puerto Rico for 5 years. He lived in America for like over 10.
Yeah, well.
America, you know, and North America, you might as well say.
Yeah.
Because he did wrestle for Al Tomko and Vancouver.
Mhm.
He wrestled everywhere. Stu Hart, Calgary. Yeah, so,
Just storied career,
it,
eh, from Pogo.
oh man, what a run.
Yeah.
Main event against Dick the Bruiser, Indianapolis. So he was on, if you notice, Florida, he was on top with Dusty Rhodes.
Mhm.
You know, it's just, it didn't end.
Mhm.
It's like I was reading a Terry Funk obituary from a couple weeks ago, and it mentioned that Terry Funk lost the Texas Brass Knucks title to Pogo.
Mhm.
And then it was like later on, you know, the chain, the lineage of the belt. And like a few years later, it was like he did the same thing with Onita.
Such old school hustle.
Yeah, it was like um it would be cool on a personal note to go like you go out into Pogo's backyard. And he was like, you know that case back there? Hard plastic case. I'm like, I'm gonna guess who gave you that. And he goes, yeah, who? I go, Terry Funk gave that to me. He's like, how you know? I was like, you told me like 4 times already.
You've heard all the stories.
That and when just randomly you would hear Pogo laughing and carrying on, and you'd walk into the room and you just hear the unmistakable voice. "Well, are you still crazy, you old bastard? What the hell are you still wrestling for?" Pogo would laugh. He'd be like, "What about the time your friend, he tried to fix me up? Oh, that girl ugly."
Just all the old war stories. Well, while we talk about crazy stories, you said that when you were in the office, they'd have show ideas and posters and stuff like that, and they'd do them in English and bring them to you to, make sure they're okay. Were there any that stand out to you that were just absolutely crazy, and any that you just let go through because you thought it would be funny to see it?
Yeah. Like the one time, this has happened so many times with like Onita with like fight of the killer crazy deathmatch king. You're like, that doesn't even make any sense. What are you trying to do? So Pogo would come up with like fight of the deathmatch century.
You're like, I'm
Fight
just
of
going
the
to let it
deathmatch
ride.
century. Yeah, he would just mess up all the. I mean, the nouns would go where the verbs are supposed to go, and everything was of the. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be anything of the. Like, oh, what is this of the? You try to put of the in front of everything. Like it only works in some, you know, or he would, they would try to always work the word hell into it. Hell death match, hell this, hell that, hell explosions. Everything was hell. And it's like, you got to save that word for when it's going to mean something big. You
Yeah.
guys are just naming everything ring of hell, hell of the ring.
It's like hell is supposed to be like the worst thing ever, and you guys use it on a Wednesday night in this bar.
Or they're like, kill or die death match. They're like, what? Killer. And then Pogo would try it again and be like, is it killer of the death match? And I'm like, oh my God. Onita would do the same thing, but Pogo, you could more or less tease. Onita would just get frustrated.
So it's just going to
Like,
be this.
frustrating Onita was also funny at times too.
Mhm.
But other times when he would just start trying to sing a song, but he didn't know any of the words to it.
Mhm.
And I was like, you're trying to say when you get caught between the moon and New York City. He's like, yes. It's like, I knew that. But yeah, like um, so many things that you're just around the office and you're like, God, they're combining ideas that they found in Mexico and Puerto Rico
Mhm.
and the old territories in the States to make different angles out of other things.
Yeah.
Other times, like, uh, some of the death matches that Pogo would run by me, and I'd be like, wait a minute, that's not even a death match guy. And he'd be like, that's why it would be so unique. He was like, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know what it's going to take to like get Sawana away from all Japan. And I don't think he's going to go for a death match.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of the times too, um, or just to make guys feel at comfort, or guys make guys feel at home, and then their eyes would open very big because they're like, oh, so this is my opponent tomorrow. And I was just like, Pogo just wanted to make sure you had some kind of camaraderie.
Mm.
And at the same time, he was like cooking a meal for them and inviting them over.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And putting them up in a hotel or whatever. The both of them would always say the same thing too. Sometimes I think they're the same kind of person.
Mhm.
All the ideas that they would come up with were taken from like stuff they had seen in Puerto Rico, Mexico, United States, territory wrestling. But Onita would always try to think outside of the box, whereas Pogo would just be like, no, this is more like Wing style, what Wing would have done.
Mhm.
If we have a scaffold here, or if we have like barrels that are full of fire, he's like, that's what Wing would have done.
Mhm.
He still tried to follow more of a Wing like decorum.
Mhm.
The only place where he would lose it is, Ibaragi would always come around.
Mhm.
Miki Ibaragi. And I love Ibaragi so much to this day, even though so many people can't stand the guy, or other wrestlers would come up to you and be like, stay away from that guy. And I'd be like, no, he's my friend. Like,
Yeah.
I like him.
Mhm.
I was like, Pogo still, love that guy. But other times it would be kind of like frustrating because you'd be like, you don't, you're going to miss out on a lot of stuff because this guy knows how to hustle and sell tickets.
Mhm.
So it was just like, I know Nita has a natural hatred for him,
Mhm.
but I'm like, it's selling the company short because every time Pogo would book Onita, Ibaragi wasn't anywhere around. He was nowhere to be found.
Yeah,
He didn't want to be around him.
yeah, yeah. They just have never got on.
Yeah, so it sells everything short.
Yeah, yeah. How,
So
how's it been? Like since the I guess the relaunch of as FMWE when that was all announced and then everything that's played out. How's it been as far as crowd response and things within Japan? Like was the fan base really excited to see that all happening?
well, there's less touring and there's more like, freelance and indie work, like wherever Pogo or Onita goes. And it's not nearly what, like, they've run at the same venue
Mm-hmm.
like once every 2 or 3 months, and then they'll splinter off and they'll find like other work or something else with FMWE, like a certain house show or out here on the naval base or things like that. Onita also has Fire Pro,
Yeah.
so and he has like, or the other Onita Pro that he has is like if he finds somebody that wants to run a house show with him with his crew of guys and that kind of thing and not do it under the FMWE banner
Sure.
because they themselves are producing the show.
Yep.
So, you always have things like that where
Yep.
the boys are, where the boys themselves are the ones that are, financing it or have found the money guy
Mm-hmm.
and they know that without Onita or without a major name, it's not going to go off.
Yeah.
Especially being that he has trademarked the death match, the exploding death match thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it was like every time DDT wanted to use it, they would have to go to get a hold of him and use him,
Yeah. Right.
and they would have to, yeah, they would have to bring in his guys and everything. So
So
it's pretty neat.
the idea of like and the gimmick of it all and stuff of exploding deathmatch that's like copyrighted to him essentially. Like nobody else can use it.
Yeah, exclusively to him. Yeah,
Wow,
which is why
smart.
you wind up with the weird variations of explosion of the king death match, and you're like, I got to fix that too. So they would always run stuff by me. So it doesn't go more than a day or two that I usually hear from them, and you know, and that kind of thing. Um, I hate to almost think that like WWS at this point is floating and is surviving in a big way because they still continue to have big crowds with Onita,
Yeah.
but it's like what happens, Pogo would do some of his house shows would do perfectly well and good without Onita.
Uh-huh.
Will WWS ever reach that level again?
Hmm.
I truly in the bottom of my heart, I hope that it would because a lot of us, like the time they bought the wrong barbed wire and they came up with the ones that have like an inch
Oh,
of the barb sticking off of it. And
Jesus.
that thing, and it was all brand new.
Yeah.
It was a brand new spool. So that thing cut up my fingers and cut up my back and hands and everywhere, just so bad. It was absolutely brutal. And I remember the one time I was going into the one house show with me and Taka saying, this is us on top for his belt.
Yeah.
Um, I'll never forget. They're playing like the mortuary music. They're playing like the creepy, uh, death music, and
Mhm.
you're hearing taps, and they're playing it over this old like really like spooky, just creepy friggin' music. It sounded like you're attending someone's funeral. And I remember seeing them roll that thing out, and I remember asking Ramen Man, I go, is that spool with that long stuff? And he goes, yep. And I
Oh,
was like, oh shit. And then like because I had done so many death matches and everything with Takase over the years and in WWS, you never even check the steps anymore. You
yeah.
just go, whatever, it's whatever. Whatever
Yeah.
they got me booked in,
Mhm.
I'll find a way out of it. But this was the one time going into it, I was like, oh shit, they put it on two sides of the ring.
Oh,
And you're like, which is cool because you get to do high spots around it, but still, it's just like, shit. All right, well, and I can think of three things off of a reversal to do into the barbed wire because you stick. It's my real hair
yeah.
to the Leatherface man.
Yeah.
So that hair, that just reaches out and grabs your hair, and you could just, you could hear even when you grab your hair and know that it's gonna rip out.
Yeah.
You just hear the, oh
Oh,
man.
that's horrible. That's horrible. Did you
What does they say? It's good for the business. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's still gonna be rough as fuck. You were you've been in a few of the exploding matches, haven't you?
too many. There is a compilation floating around on YouTube.
Mhm.
I didn't put up the last compilation because I didn't put up the one from earlier this year. In fact, you said that this is just the audio that we're doing.
Correct, yeah.
I can take yeah, I could take that match that we did for FMWE.
Mhm.
Me, Super Beast, Boogeyman, who is also my doppelganger. He's the Japanese Leatherface.
Mhm.
Um, he's often my partner. I feud with him a whole bunch.
Mhm.
Anyway, the match that we did with that Cheetan thing and Onita and Yaguchi and Naoshi Sano, I could take that and put this audio over that so you could see that. I mean, those are just.
Yeah, that'd be fun. As we start to wrap up, let's quickly talk about your upcoming trip because you're about to head back to Japan for an open-ended amount of time. What do you have on the books? Like, is this kind of thing where you've got X amount of shows lined up, or is it just like you're coming in and let's hit the ground running and see what happens?
Well, right away, right off the top, every year I go to Valor, which at first I was going there right around Thanksgiving night, and a friend of mine brought me there.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, right after COVID, they were like, hey, we could use a draw because they used to see me out in the crowd raving and just dancing and everything in the club. So they said, what would it take for you? And of course, first things first, 666 always does their Halloween show.
Mhm.
But it's just like, as soon as I get off the plane, there's a show for Eagle Pro. Right after that, Naoshi Sano and Museum Zoo is running a house show. Like, he's Booker, and the guy that runs a Museum Zoo. The place only seats like 70 people at the most,
Mhm.
but they pack it out. It's the ring. It's on three sides of the one, of the place.
Mhm.
So it's like right out the chute. There's all independents like Eagle Pro, like Museum Zoo, Pure J Dojo. They record content there. So there's all that stuff leading up to. I go out to the highest bidder on Halloween night. I
Mhm.
hit up several of the clubs and go, hey, if you know, I'm up for bidding as far as the DJ thing goes. What kind of money can you offer?
Mhm.
And right after that is all Magic Box. The majority of my stretch here is Magic Box Pro
Mhm.
in Honjo,
Mhm.
um, where training occurs at least 2-3 days a week. It's training throughout the week, and there's also house shows from all the guys on the roster. Basically,
Mhm.
even Magic Killers 1 and 2, they run house shows. So it's like there's all that stretch of stuff in there, and once you're up in Gunma, um, my buddy Shimada runs. He's always holding his ring somewhere. So that's the best guy to get a hold of.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you could conceivably work every single night of the week in Japan.
That's crazy.
So, but the majority of the work that I have to do is with Magic Box Pro.
Mhm.
WWS, he's contacted me about several dates, and of course Onita, and that's more than enough to keep you busy.
Mhm.
And I told them, I said, I'm just going to keep going until I get a hold of you and say, no more bookings after this date.
Yeah.
Because just like last time I was there, I was like, I'm tired. I'm cold. I'm overeating, but I'm losing weight. I'm like, I'm tired. My body's just beat up.
Yeah.
And it was at that point, yeah, it was at that point that I was like 4 or 5 months in last year. And I'm like, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. You reached the
I'm
end.
burned out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm burned out. I'm beat up. I'm not just going to phone it in and take somebody's money. Like,
Yeah.
if there's nothing left, you know it.
Mhm.
If there's nothing there, you're not feeling it.
Mhm.
Don't just show up and take somebody's money.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just, you know, that's screwed up. Like, go in there and give them all you got. These people are paying you.
Yeah.
They're not paying you $40. They're not giving you the old Memphis 40. They're not just giving you 100. get off your ass and work for it. Like, these people flew you here.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm. That's
All the
exactly
stuff
right.
that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll put you up in hotel rooms, introduce you to friends, and your friends are here. Can you sign a couple of these? And then when you sign a couple of them, they have another envelope ready for you before you're, when you're done eating. So you're just like, continue to give. Just this is all that it amounts to. This is what you came here to do.
Yeah.
So if it means going to Animal Hamaguchi's gym for 3 hours a day, then do your lightweight.
Yeah.
Do your free weights, do your amateur grappling, do your stretching, and do your exercise bike for those 3 hours. Like
Mm-hmm.
you are here to be primed and get ready for, because it's so funny. Like Yaguchi, Ichiro Yaguchi is another guy whose company I work for. He started up his own like Chikara type of league
Mm-hmm.
where you're under 2, 3 different mats a night.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also still running a Soxa Pro, which is like most of us, like me, Ricky Fuji, guys like that, dressing up as like different animals and stuff like that.
So fun.
He reprises my old, yeah, he reprises my old role from SPWF,
Mm.
which is Yoshiaki Yatsu, who he's running an Atami still. He's running at least like twice a month. So I go all the way out there, which is like a 6-hour train ride.
Mm.
It was so cool because I took the bullet train back last time.
Love it.
Yeah. And so I was like back to Tokyo. Big Bear Produce, they run at least twice a month. So there's all kinds of dates woven in and out of there with them. There's plethoras of indies. Tobita is still trying to get his thing up and going. There's all the shows from Kiitiano runs his own independent right there in Todokan Museum. So, God, I can go on and on and on with all the different indie work out there. Fighting Ultimate Crazy Kings, fuck, is the name of the company.
That's a sick name.
They continue to run semi-regularly, at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all kinds of those dates, in and out. The tricky thing is telling people, hey, before you commit, I got somebody else that wanted me on this date. I don't know if they penciled me in, but if it's not etched in stone, first thing I look at an independent and go, what kind of money are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's something that's not within reason, they know I'm not leaving the house for,
Yeah.
I'm not going anything below a brother price. Like, I'll do your brother price because I know I'm going to sell. I just got in stickers, buttons, keychains, magnets. I just got in tons of that stuff. So there's enough to go around,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's really cool because a lot of people are like, yeah, it's my goal to go to Japan or whatever, to work in Japan, to do that kind of thing. And, they've usually got, certain bigger companies in mind. But I feel like this really highlights the ability to network and to work hard and build a resume of, goodwill that can then see you into a network of wrestling that runs through all of Japan, that
off the top of my head, like Tababa,
yeah.
he does like 3/4 shoot style. Muto Pro, which a good buddy of mine, Tahara, Yuichi Tahara, he has a hand in the booking there, so they use me. But these are, but it's, Fugo always runs a Todokan museum, Fugo, and every once in a while, I'll go to 2AW, that used to be Kaientai Pro.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to go there because the young guys respect, and they're like, "Oh, can you show me how to do reversal from here?" And I would like to learn how to get out of these holds. So you go down there, and you go to what used to be Kaientai Pro.
Mm-hmm.
You go down there. There's some of those dates out in Shiba, and like I said, same town every single night. I don't know if I brought up Kurishimo Kamen or not yet, but Kurishimo Kamen, he'll wrestle a giant bottle of beer, no ring, like it takes place in front of a bunch of Japanese hipsters like bohemian people with long stem cigarettes, and um,
That's amazing.
you know, on top of it, there's several bars that I go to
Mhm.
where I can sell my merchandise out of. Like the minute I show up,
Yeah.
there's a very Japanese businessman, and the bar owner will chat me up and be like, "Hey, this guy." Another good friend of mine, she runs like a really small bar where she has to be out of there by midnight, which is perfect because you sit around drinking for a few hours. You're like after you've done your gym and everything else, or
Mhm.
even after one of your bookings, and it's just like good merchandise. You have a bunch of beer. You talk with these guys about the good old days, what they used to love about wrestling, and
Yeah.
but yeah, a lot of it for me this time around centers out of Magic Box Pro because
Uh-huh.
they're the ones that fly me in. They're the ones that bring me in. They're the ones. It used to be before like Onita would bring me in, Pogo would bring me in. More and more lately, it's been Magic Box Pro that's
Mhm.
picked up because they'll go to other independent promotions and they'll say, Tony's in town. Hey, she
Mhm.
want the chainsaw and everything. And they're like, listen, we spent X amount of money to fly this guy in. You got to help us out here,
Mhm.
right? And people are very cordial over there.
Yeah.
You know how many promotions I work for? Look at Basement Monstar. I work for Fight of the Century, Fight of the Ring, um, even like oh god, Nagase's promotion. The guy that wears the karate gi in the ring. Um,
Oh, I'm not
the
sure.
work that I do for his Fight of the Ring promotion,
Mhm.
Basement Monstar. You can sit there and from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, one company will come in there and run. Then there's another company that comes right back in right after them. 18 Pro Wrestling is another one too. That God, when I attended their New Year's Eve party, I'll never forget. I'll never forget. It's Tomohiko Hashimoto when he co-owned the place. Um, he told me he was like, "Well, now you're linked forever with this crazy family." So 18 Pro Wrestling that used to be Apache Pro before Wayne Kanamura had his big scandal and turned over the ownership.
Okay.
So Hasagawa is now the sole owner, and I love Hasagawa.
Mhm.
Another great guy. Another guy. But you'll see as each of these companies run, there's a Joshi promotion that runs in there.
Mhm.
All of them run in Basement Monstar, and it's only 15 minutes from my house. It's only like 4 stops away. But the most amazing thing about them is
Mhm.
you'll see banners and they have giant magnets on the ring post that they just pull off, and the next promotion comes in,
Click,
sets it
click,
up.
and then it's their turn to run in it.
It's
That's
fucking. I
smart.
swear to
It's
God,
really smart.
as God is my witness, it is the biggest wrestling junkie indie haven on this planet. To sit there and watch 6 different indies come in back to back to back all day long, and the other indies, they're like, "Shit! If I knew you were here, I would have booked you on my shit."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh," and they're like, "What are you gonna do?" I was like, "I was gonna go out and have some lunch and bring it back here, eat me some soup and stuff." And
Mhm.
I was like, "I was just gonna sell gimmicks. I didn't know that it was your company coming in next."
Uh-huh.
And they're like, "Well, what do you think about wrestling? I'll send somebody out for food." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Hell yeah!"
Let's go.
I was like, "Look, I got my yeah." I was like, "I got my Tony Myers gear too. If you want me to work twice, I don't care."
Yeah. Do
He's
both.
like, I was like, "Just don't go taking advantage of the brother price because I'm already here."
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the only thing I'll tell them. Like I don't mean to sound like a prick or like I'm a big star, but that is the best. I would go to the corner store one time. I know there's a laundromat that's like right down the street.
Mhm.
So literally, I dried my gear as I went to like a 7-Eleven, got some hot coffee, some finger foods, and I went back to the laundromat, grabbed my friggin' gear out of there. It is,
This is the
if
dream.
you love pro wrestling, you love the indie, and you just want to wrestle, you can just stay at Basement Monster all day long.
Do
It's
fans
incredible.
come in? Do you see like regular fans come in essentially in the morning and just stay all day and just watch everything?
There are fans that I see, and it's so funny because those same fans that you see do that, they come for like 2 or 3 or 4 different shows.
Mhm.
They leave with giant like shopping bags full of stuff.
Full of gimmicks. Yeah.
They,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, they bought everybody's T-shirts, everybody's 8x10s. And it's so great seeing them stay. And it's kind of like the inside joke because they're sophisticated fans anyway. But
Mhm.
I never let them see like Tony Myers messing around with Leatherface's mask or
Sure.
Chainsaw Tony's mask. You know, it just stays totally different to me.
Yeah.
It's like two different worlds. You'll see me just walking around like regular singlet
Mhm.
with my, black and red boots,
Mhm.
knee pads, and you'll see me like warming up outside the ring. Like I just got done wrestling as Chainsaw Tony, like for the prior show or whatever.
Yeah.
And you'll see me in between just warming up, like one of the fans will look at you and wink, like, "Yeah, you just had a good match." It's like,
Yeah.
who did? No, I wasn't even here. I
No,
just
what are you
I
talking
just
about? I
arrived at
just
the
arrived.
building.
Just got into the building. That's
But yeah,
awesome, man.
I could just go on and on and on about. I mean, it's like I'd mentioned Yoshiaki Yatsu. He still has SPWF. He still has people, that are footing the bill for the place. He's getting the place for next to nothing.
Mhm.
They bring a handful of people, and it's just indies, just from, especially the Gunma area. It's kind of spread out,
Mhm.
but there's just indies all over. Like
Yeah.
Eagle Pro is now running more in Saitama, but Gunma, yeah, they're always using my buddy Hiroshi Shimada's ring, aka Great Pogo, aka Uchumeijin Powers Silver X.
Jesus, what a name.
He is he has had so many. I was laughing like Crusher Takahashi. Um, I wrestle him on a bunch of independents all over the place,
Mhm.
and he himself. I'm like, you know, I was just joking with him. I go, one time I saw you wrestle in some place you were Alien Guts. His name was Alien Guts,
That's a great gimmick.
and I'm like, why is Crusher Takahashi wrestling as Alien Guts? And he goes, oh, I told him I'd give him a good deal, man, if I showed up with a mask and did double duty.
So he just invented a gimmick for the thing. Is there like for people who want to try and like plug into more of that Japanese independent scene, are there any like streaming services or YouTube channels or anything like that that you would recommend them trying to get around? Because I always love seeing that stuff when I'm in Japan trying to see whatever I can, but it can be hard to track, if you're stateside, if you're, in Western society and stuff, because it can be pretty,
You that's
underground.
that's another advantage of the Stanley Club that I go to,
Mm-hmm.
the bar that's in Shinjuku. Outside, there's shady characters. They'll try to sell you everything from drugs to hookers. They're just idiots, and
Yeah.
you're like, get away from me.
Uh-huh.
But when you go into that Stanley Club,
Mhm.
randomly you'll see like a Jun Kasai as the special guest bartender, or
Yeah.
this guy, that guy, and just by talking to like Gus Ishikawa, you talk to him and you're like, what's coming up? And he already knows a plethora. Like Sano himself knows like a plethora, like every indie that's coming up, everybody that's running everywhere. I try to tell guys all the time, there's two places that are really wonderful. If you can get a foot in the door,
Hmm.
actually, there's four. Um, One of them is Museum Zoo, and all the guys that train out there, it's a girls' promotion, Pure J Dojo,
Hmm.
but they allow men to come in there and work out.
Hmm.
Either one of those two for working out, or Magic Box Pro is a place that if you know somebody and you could go up there and you're allowed to work out once they see you got talent, once they see a foreigner there, they're like, oh, special. But I just try to tell people, please don't think that you could just show up and they're going to be like, oh, wow, we can't wait to use him. He's a foreigner.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, the money's not there because people don't know who the hell you are.
Yeah.
And even if you get the special treatment, it's like, you better work twice as hard because that guy just paid for a $200 sushi meal for you. Like,
Yeah.
like, don't think you could be an unknown. And when you go into their dojos, Ice Ribbon used to be another place where me, Tahara, a whole bunch of us would always work out at that Ice Ribbon girls dojo. And, I mentioned Kiti Yano's name before. Yano would run his own house shows there.
Hmm.
And I remember the promotion WXY. Yeah, it was WYZ. WYZ was a promotion that they would tape their content in front of maybe 20, 30 people, and it would only be 3 matches. But they're charging like $40 a ticket, and
Sure.
they sell their downloads, they make them available. The problem is that, like, whenever you see stuff from Japanese indies that's uploaded on YouTube, it's usually bootleg,
Yeah,
pirated
it's like
stuff.
fan footage
it's
and
not
stuff.
the
Yeah, it's not the good cams and stuff.
Yeah. So it's like they want you to go indirectly to these promotions so you can get all their downloads, or they want you to go to the shop in Takasaki to go. They want you to go to that museum so that you go and buy their DVDs or footage, or it's the same way in Totocon. A lot of the tiny indies have their own stuff there. That's how they want you to support them. But for guys looking for work, best thing that you can do. Outside of the places I mentioned, Pure J Dojo, um, Kaientai, which is now 2AW. If you could get your foot in there, I knew a lot of people that the problem is that when you're spending money to go to a place like that, because there are dojos and dorms and everything, it's like $1,000 for the whole month, but that doesn't include your food and all the other stuff that you get into. So it's like, it costs the promotion nothing because you're just sleeping there.
Yeah.
And I think the most you can stay is a month on that kind of, like, I guess you could stay with a tourist visa for a few months, but you're only allowed in their dojo for 1 month for that kind of money. And it's like, I was around, I was around Nozawa forever. But the deal where they have where you spend like what, $3,000 to go and try out in Noah's place, or for I don't know what that money entails that you're spending to go over to Noah just to say you had a match there, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And unless being invited by New Japan, you would have to have rocks in your head to go into an open tryout. If you saw the dozens upon hundreds of thousands of wrestlers that try out there, you're better off going to Animal Hamaguchi's, who teaches like shoot wrestling. You're much better there because, number one, to keep you in shape. Number two, everybody from Tajiri to Tetsuya Naito, Hanma, some of the biggest friggin' names in New Japan wrestling all went through Hamaguchi's before they became professional wrestlers.
Yeah.
Ichiro Yaguchi went there. The list is endless.
Yeah.
And when, man, I'm tending to ramble, I know.
No.
When I went to Hamaguchi's, he opened up a brand new gym, which is like 4 stories. So it's way bigger. And his wife, his daughter's always there. That's the girl that had the 2 silver medals in the Olympics and the bronze.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Keiko is no joke. She's got shoulders like grapefruits. But it's only like $100 a month. And, for their classes, you have to be accepted into their amateur class. I'll stand up there all day long. There's guys that come through, that they're now big names for like Big Japan Wrestling. I remember some of those guys coming there and saying, please teach me self-defense. And I remember him feeding them to me and going, show them how to lock up like pro wrestling. And then Animal Hamaguchi would come over there and be like, this is how we lock up for amateur wrestling. He's like, see the world of difference? He's like, you're going to have to know this if you want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Got to learn those basics and fundamentals and things like that, right?
It's awesome because, see, I swear to God, I'm not any kind of shooter, but the stuff I learned down on the mat at Hamaguchi's is fucking gold. And it helped my cardio out. It shot my cardio through the roof. Because you know how it is. If you can go through 30 seconds of shoot wrestling, and then one up that and keep going through it. I went to a boxing gym the last time I was there, just because it was a boxing gym. And I was just like, wow, something new. Besides my shoulder at the time, I thought it needed surgery. So, it's to me, it's like with pro wrestling, it's what a beautiful universal world it is because you discover there's so much to it. I mean, they stick guys that aren't even trained pro wrestlers in the ring over there, and you're just like, especially on Muto Pro, that's a group that's like 3/4 shoot, and I'm not a shooter,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll grapple with anybody. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I can always get somebody's ankle. I can always grab somebody's arm. There's always a way out.
Yeah.
And I'll fight for it. Why not? I want to show people that I can actually wrestle, and they don't just think I'm all deathmatch and jumping into piles of. If there is a compilation on YouTube though of me taking one explosion after another, and it just gets like redundant where you see like you're like, oh, I thought I saw that one. Oh, that was a different guy. Oh, that was Mammoth Sasaki hitting him over the head with that bat and exploded. Like it's just.
I think if anything, like your entire journey and everything is really summed up into really just doing whatever is needed. It's versatility and it's networking and it's just being there for everything. And I think there's like a lesson that can be taught to wrestlers, that it's like there can be a living and you can live that Japanese dream and, of wrestling there and doing that thing and being a full-time wrestler by really just being willing to listen, learn, work hard, network and just see where it takes you. Because that almost carny, like, well, not carny's the wrong word, but like the territory system or whatever that was back in the day and stuff, where it's just constant, like doing whatever needs to be done, still exists there, and it's still going really, really strong, which is really cool.
And it does. Like, how many times somebody said, "Hey, talk to them, man. They really need you there. They want you there."
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. No Chainsaw, and I'm like, sometimes I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but Chainsaw Tony would help draw them in more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go there and I see like first 3 matches on the card, all amateurs, all guys like a kickboxer versus a karate guy, like a boxer versus like a jiu-jitsu guy. And you're like, huh. And then you're going out there as Tony Myers. You're like, this is not the kind of crowd that you would have Chainsaw Tony run into the crowd.
Yeah.
He's a conservative, laid back. They want they want combat sports.
Yeah.
They want like a combat looking thing. Like when I did my whole series with Tababa, it was awesome because me and Tababa did it for Hanawa. We did it for Fugo. And then it culminated, climax with us doing a dark match for Muto Pro.
Mm-hmm.
But at Muto Pro, like the third match, the dark match that we had, they were like, it was a draw. And they let the fans just sitting there to think, a draw. But these two are already, Tababa beat Chainsaw Tony. Then Tony Myers beat Tababa. We needed this third match because, the more sophisticated fans knew Tony Myers under the mask, So then me and Tababa had, he's like, okay. He's like, I have an idea. I was like, what's that? He comes to me on the microphone and he goes, we got to have this settled. Before you go back to America, people, is it okay if this match winds up on the main card? And like you start hearing the audience clapping and, they're like, now they're starting like a steady clap. They're like, clap, 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 clap. And he's like, all right, you got yourself a deal. He's like, Tony, we got to break this tie. Mm-hmm. There's no way I want you to go back to America without knowing who the better man was between the both of us. Mm-hmm. And the second we got back there, I just looked at him and I was like, okay, I'm taking your finisher then. He's like, no. And I'm like, yes, I am. Yeah. And there's nothing you could do about it. I was like, I'll sandbag you. I'll lay down on you. Then there's nothing you could do but cover me. And,
yeah. See, that goes a long way. That's part of it. You know what I mean? That showing him that you value what you've been doing, like that's important.
Yeah, and then like Tababa in his own promotion, when I came back to Japan, we had 2 matches with each other. We had 2 singles matches with each other. And then finally, like the last one I had, I said, listen, I'm just some goofy American guy. I was like, take a look at it. I was like, this right here is called Thanksgiving in America. It's time for family to be together. I was like, I look around here in this crowd tonight. That must mean that you're all my family. And then we get attacked by a couple of guys, and that was the main event. On the show after that, coming back for Dababa was me and him teaming up.
That's
And
great.
then
That's how you do
then
it.
it got to where we actually. Oh, it was so funny. We actually lost that match, and he goes, maybe old Tony Myers can't do it, but I know somebody who can. And he pulls a chainsaw. He pulls a chainsaw out from the back.
Yeah.
And he goes, so tell your friend, please come down here next month. All the fans, me, we'll all come again. We'll all have a big party again. He's like, come on out to the next show, people. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of these guys. I was like, this is so awesome.
That's wicked. Tell your friend. It's classic.
Yeah, like bring along a friend.
Because like you say,
And he was
everybody
like,
knows, right? And they're like, yes, now we're actually going to do it. That's awesome.
and then he goes, hey, I just got an idea. He goes, listen, I'm fat. And he goes, so what we're going to do is, he's like, we're going to add just 3,000 yen on the end. And he goes, and everybody gets to drink free tea and eat all the sausage and food that they want. Everybody was like, whoa, the fans heard that. Whoa. So it's, even on the tiniest indies, the indie bubble burst in Japan, I'm going to say around 2006, 2007, where everybody was just, they're like, we're not going to make any money, by having a new federation come up. So let's just continue to have dream matches and let it splinter off into other independents. But, Thai was another place that was developed for, they just wanted guys to have ring time. And you would see them at this food market on a busy Saturday, and you would see several hundred people in the crowd.
Yeah.
And they're just watching 3 different matches. And like after those 3 matches, which were stretched out to like 90 minutes, because some of those matches were like 40 minutes, it was just designed to give ring time. But yeah, that was ran by old Iron Shoes. The referee, Iron Man, Nishida. There was like indie splintering off of there. Mumei, which one of my best buddies is still to this day. Hiroshi Watanabe. I love that guy. He was a tiny, undersized guy I met in IWA Kokasai, and then I wrestled for Battle Aid at a Shinkiba First Ring. And several indies that we went to, they were like, we want you guys because you guys club and beat the shit out of one another. And I was like, because he's safe.
Yeah.
That guy would hit me with the hardest goddamn forearms. And if you've ever seen the legs on him, in reality, he's only about 5'4" or 5'5", but he's got tree trunk legs. And that little bastard there, man, when he would drop kick me or suplex me, holy shit.
Just killing it.
But here we both are in our late 40s. Yeah. And other independents, like that's when Battle Aid picked up on it. They're like, we heard that you guys been having some real barn burners out there in Gunma around the indie scene there. And they're like, can you guys bring that same rough shit here?
Yeah.
And I told him I would tell Watanabe, because he was actually one of the zombies when I met him. He was either zombie 1 or 2 or zombie 8. He was a young boy, just getting in where he could with Goro Surumi and IWA Kokasai. I also saw him 2 years into his career. He wrestled the original Tiger Mask.
Oh, really?
This is like 95. This is like my second year in Japan. Wow. And I thought, holy shit, that's the original fucking Tiger Mask.
Yeah.
And he's wrestling this young boy. It was like a 5-minute exhibition, but all he did was his signature Tiger Mask stuff.
Yeah.
And by then he was older and heavier, but it was just like, I'm at this random independent watching this, and I'm like, holy shit.
So, this is the amazing part is that like that just like underbelly of like Japanese independence that exist where you can just walk into that. And I see it all the time on like social media and stuff. It would just be like, this dude's at this bar or this thing. There's just this entire scene that flows through it. I think we're going to be back in Japan in like February, March. So I'm definitely going to have to hit you up and be like, where are the places I need to go to? Because it's not exactly like you can just Google them, you know? Yeah.
Or you could always go. Shinkiba First Ring is the ECW arena of Tokyo.
Yeah, I've been to Shinkiba a few times. It's awesome.
Look on the site. Mm-hmm. Look on their site because Stardom's runs there. Everybody. One time Onita co-ran with Stardom's, like right around Halloween.
That's sick.
And we were the main event of like a Stardom show. Like, when does that ever happen? But it was this
so
weird.
Great.
It was this weird crossover where Onita was dancing in the ring with little girls, and it was just strange. But I'm just like, well, you know, another great day.
Yeah, I've told a couple of stories about like my journeys to Shinkiba on this podcast, and I think it really is one of like my absolute favorite wrestling venues. It's just in the middle of like this warehouse district, you know. I mean, you can just walk down there from the train, and it's just got this great vibe about it.
You could see from the glass elevator. Mm-hmm. You could just about damn near see the actual warehouse that it's held in.
When we first did it, we kind of we didn't get off at that main train station. We decided we felt like a walk. We love to walk in Japan, and so we were in another area kind of nearby, and we just decided to walk it. So we're just like walking, you know, along the water and along the road and stuff like that. And it's just getting more and more kind of warehousey and so we're like, where the fuck are we going? Like, what is it? And there's like fish markets and stuff.
You probably saw that. Yeah, you probably saw that one humongous sign with the arrow pointing Shinkiba First Ring, and you were like, oh.
I did not see a sign. I have never seen a sign, no. I'll have to find that next time.
You know, on the other side is where Muto Pro runs. They
really?
Muto Pro runs on the other side of those tracks.
Oh, okay.
But it's in that enormous municipal building where you walk in there. There's little girls doing gymnastics. Mm-hmm. There's people in the swimming pool, like an Olympic pool. It's a sports complex, and you're like, they have one room that was sectioned off to Muto Pro, and I didn't even tell you about the Super Sleaze wrestling feds. Like Madman Yamada runs there, Futo Nita runs his own company. I've seen him do a 45-minute death match in front of like 2 paid fans.
45 minutes.
And right after that,
that's amazing.
I saw it because it was on the grounds. It was on the actual grounds, like where the grass is.
Yeah.
Before you get to Kurokan Hall.
Yeah.
So they figured that these fans would come out anyway because and they had 2 paid fans, and then one of the fans that paid, they said, "Can you run camera? Just hold this camera here and make sure it records."
So he paid to go, and then he's holding the camera as well.
Yeah. Then they told the other fan, hey, can you come in here and referee? We forgot we don't have a referee. And these 2 other people walked up in the middle of this. Shit. Yeah, it was hysterical. 2 other fans walked up and they were like, "Oh yeah, we don't have anybody to take any ticket money at the door." So they told the one fan, they go, "Hey, you be the ticket taker. We'll pay you. We have 3 paid people now." And then the guy's like, "Okay." So then
we'll pay you. We've got 3 paid people, and they're already like running cameras.
Yes, and this goes on for like, you know, in between their 45-minute match, like they would stop what they were doing. They're like, "Oh, stop, a fan," and they go over there and get the guy's yen and take his money, and the guy would be paying like $40 American for this. And then, so when it was all said and done, they got a referee. Then the one fan that they let in, that got to be like a normal fan. The other fan was like, you know, now running the door, and they let another fan in. So they were everybody was laughing, going, 2 paid fans. They had a 45-minute match in front of 2 paid fans. Like, wait a minute, the other 4 people paid too.
But then they had to pay them back for doing the different jobs of the crew.
But that's just hysterical. That's something that goofy would happen.
Yeah, it was that the gimmick of the match? Like the point was we're going to do the shittest thing of all time and do all these things? Or was it literally like just that shit and they were just making it up as they go?
It was just them pretty much just making it. They had their gear with them because they were participating in a battle royal inside the
They're
Kurokan
like,
home.
it's
So
essentially busking at this
they
point.
put out on the internet. They only had like 1 or 2 posters that they put out, but they put out on the internet, hey, special match, Futonita versus Madman Yamada. Like death match on the grounds.
All the
So the people
grass.
that went there couldn't find the place because of like we don't see any grass around Kurokan Hall. But they were going to Kurokan anyway, so
I
it didn't
can't.
matter.
Where's the grass? Like I've been to Corcoran heaps of times. I can't really think of where there's any grass.
I don't know where but they found enough because I saw a video of the match.
Yeah,
I saw a video of the match, and they like shot the 2 fans that actually showed up and paid.
it's so funny
then the
because
2 of
you
them,
have obviously been in Japan so many times that you're also like, I don't know where this was.
then they had one time I saw Shitiano, Katiano. He ran a match in a hallway, and there was like 5 paid people. No ring, no nothing. It was in a hallway
I love that.
in front of the bar.
I'm obsessed with that. This is the kind of events I want to attend. This is everything I wanted, man.
I'm like, this is so super sleaze-tastic that it's hysterical.
It's
this is classic.
unbelievable.
Like, who the hell
I would
come?
be one of those paying fans to see this tragedy unfold.
I thought about doing one myself out in Winnow Park because they have Winnow Park right by the museum. It's got all that grass. There's always people doing like mime and magician acts. And and I thought, let me find somebody, run our own house show out there. Even if it's in front of 10 paid people, like what the fuck? It'd
just be funny.
Or wrestle and be like, wrestle like they do in Mexico and be like, hey, we'll pass around a bucket when it's over.
Exactly.
A little something for our efforts.
Just in the traffic.
It's Shindy Haven.
I love it.
It's just, yeah.
I love it.
There's a match that exists somewhere with Mammoth not Mammoth Sasaki, is Mammoth Honda is this guy who notoriously is just unathletic and just, boy, he was like one of Ultraman Robin's people who, Ultraman Robin has his own fed, is SGP, which runs at a train station once a year, and it's beyond packed. I mean, if you ever saw the video of this thing, there's at least 4,000 or 5,000 people just wandering around to vendors and how they have this thing set up. But anyway,
that's amazing. Those
2 got out in the middle of nowhere and had a match on the side of the road and sold this download and sold this DVD of this thing. And, there were people out there that were willing to buy it. I saw Minoru Suzuki. And the guy's like an almighty god of fucking New Japan. I saw him do an indie shot for that group that I mentioned. Fighting Ultimate Crazy King.
Fuck.
Fighting Ultimate Crazy King. And they put a star, or they put an asterisk after the U. So it's FU and then the asterisk CK.
That's amazing. They really like know what they're doing with this stuff. It's just so funny.
They're probably the lowest rent indie next to the JWA that run.
But they have the best name. Building. They should be the highest ranked.
But like they've been running for way over 10 years. But Fuck has never had more than like 40, 50 people. Only the time Minoru Suzuki came, you saw like the first match on the show was backyard level, horrifyingly bad. But then when you see the main event with Minoru Suzuki and the camera's panning around, you're like, wow, there's actually like 250 people there.
Yeah, they've all rocked up to see him.
And people are handing Suzuki, they're handing him flowers. I got a bit curious and I looked it up on that CageNet site, the German site.
Yeah.
I looked it up and it was sandwiched in between 2 matches he had for New Japan. I was like, he came down here to this tiny little indie.
Yeah.
Who were probably giving him a couple grand. It was probably one of their loyal fans that wanted to see him.
Yeah. And
And they pretty much said,
he
hey,
like left a New Japan show, came down to fuck, did a match, and then left and went into
and then left because he had a day off from New Japan. And he's allowed to freelance.
yeah.
Liger did that. Liger went to Eagle Pro, and everybody was like, "Holy shit!" He wrestled Cosmic Soldier,
Mhm.
and it was just like for Liger to take off from his busy schedule in New Japan
Mhm.
to come down to Eagle Pro and do one tiny little shot in this smaller fed was like, whoa. But they don't realize those guys can and will freelance. Like if
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. The money's
it,
right,
it-
or it's a friend, or he owes a favor, or something like that. You know, they're going to make it happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the indie scene over in Japan split off into so many factions. I mean,
Mhm. Well, and
my
I
God.
guess they don't really forget where they come from either. You know what I mean? There's a lot of tradition and honor and respect that runs deep. You know, so everybody.
When Aoyagi would run his stuff, or Tarzan Goto would run his Goto Ipa in that tiny little bar that he used to help and work at. Um, I mean, some of Tarzan Goto's shows only had 15 people on them, and other shows drew well because it was like him versus Pogo. Loser of the match has to serve the other one tea wearing a dress.
This is ridiculous.
So it's like even the tiny little promotions like Goto Ipa,
Yeah.
they were still doing pretty good for a tiny little shit indie.
Hmm.
And Goto had to give, Pogo like money,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not just talking to here's a couple $100.
It's
Pogo
also
himself living all the way up in Gunma.
yeah.
He's not doing any shot unless, you know, as far as I knew, Pogo, the best brother price he would ever do it for was like $500.
Yeah. Wow. So
And that would
and
be like
that's not small for like a small show that's drawing like 30, 40 people. You know, that's a lot.
right. But like, they would it's synonymous. Back in the day they had Nisei Onita. Nisei is Japanese for fake. Well, um, and of course his legal name was Moria. Nobody understood. Nobody could ever figure out where he got his money from, but he would wrestle for Goro Tsurumi's IWA Kokusai, and they would bring in some of the biggest fucking names. Even Shoji, Shoji, the guy that he used to be the former journalist. He was also a baseball player,
Mhm.
Nakamaki. They'd give him a few $100, and if Goro Tsurumi was short money, he would just go to him. That was his money guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what the arrangement was. Nobody understood where the money ever came from. It was
Shady deals.
beyond strange.
Yeah.
No, Sano himself. He was one of his best buddies, and Sano had told me he was like, it was weird. He was married to this Filipino lady who spoke no Japanese, and then after he passed away, his son came to Sano and he was like, I heard my dad made big money with wrestling. He was like, he always had us in lavish places and everything. And Sano was like, we always assumed that he made all his money
Like
outside of
elsewhere.
wrestling.
Yeah, elsewhere. That like the rest of the people are like, wasn't us.
But you never know what the arrangements or what,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
he could have had him like, Goro Tsurumi worked at like a little kiosk, like as his regular job because IWA Kokusai wasn't going to pay all his
Yeah,
bills.
sure.
And he has one son that's like mentally irregular, very erratic guy. And he had a guy that wrestled as his son. So people sometimes confuse the two of them. But right there in Totoka Museum, I've seen his Uchu Meijin X,
Mhm.
his Uchu Meijin mask,
Mhm.
the alien invader, outer space, the mask itself, the black hockey mask
Mhm.
with the X on it.
Mhm.
I've seen that. That's been in Totoka Museum. It's one of the first things you see, like on like one of the walls when you walk in. You're like, holy shit.
Mhm.
And yeah, anyway, he worked like part time at a kiosk. He probably incorporated Nisei Onita. He probably incorporated him to do some, I know that he was always driving him around
Mhm.
and he was always his money guy. So
Mhm.
Surumi had to have him do some kind of hustling, to
Yeah.
get IWA, get the funding out there and that kind of thing.
Yeah, some kind of like dodgy side hustle on the side.
Yeah, that Shogun guy, he was hardly even a trained wrestler.
Yeah.
And he paid Onita all that money to have a death match with him on the roof of his house. And like the roof of his house had like a swimming pool, hot tub, all kinds of gardens and stuff like that. And he paid Onita on prime national TV. He paid Onita big bucks to come in there and basically beat the shit out of him in a death match. Which is funny because
I was going to say that there is that sort of thing in Japanese culture, right, where like status is a thing. Like they want to, with sponsors and things like that, it's about, showing their friends that they've got money and they can do these things and stuff. So they'll splash out on something like this just to essentially show other businessmen that they can, right?
Yeah, and to show them, hey, look at me, I got clout.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that whole status thing.
On that very same day, they showed Naoshi Sano himself had a match with this Shogun guy in the guy's living room. Then he got done with that match. He got the shit kicked out of him by Sano. Then he goes upstairs and Onita beats the shit out of him.
It's like you paid for this. Why did you fucking pay these two dudes to kick the shit out of you in your own house?
Yeah, exactly. And that's pretty much what he had told him in a promo when he was kicking his ass.
Yeah. Why have you done this to yourself? But I guess it's that thing when, then he goes and sees his buddies at the office or whatever, and he's like, see, I told you I'd fucking do it. It's that kind of thing.
You never know what walk of life, what aspect, you never know how. And like I said, the thing with Shogun and Onita that was on national TV. Oh, so he had to spend a shitload of money for that block to air that.
That's huge. Exactly. It's very strange, but that's like the amazing thing about Japanese wrestling. And man, I can't tell you like your journey and like all this kind of insight into the independence is fascinating to me. It's like such an interesting life, and I'm so excited for you to be heading back again. And I'm really hoping there's a brief window of opportunity to, hopefully not too broken down by the time we hit Japan in March and we can grab a beer. I can catch a show or something, because that'd be really cool, man.
That would be absolutely incredible.
I've got to thank you, Tony. I can't believe you've given me so much.
I could talk to you for 5 days.
Well, we can do this again, my man.
I'm always here, so.
No. This has been absolutely awesome. I want to thank you so much for giving us your time, for giving everybody a little peek into the world of Japanese wrestling. It's real, guys, and if you've ever got the ability to journey to Japan and see this stuff, like, it's just a never-ending rabbit warren. There's a reason why I've been to Japan. Well, it'll be 7 times coming. It's because not only is it a beautiful place with beautiful, kind people, but there's also just this amazing, hotbed and an undercurrent of independent wrestling that runs through the entire place. So make sure you check out everything Tony Myers. Follow the links. They're all in the show notes. Check out the YouTube. We're going to put this interview up on YouTube as well. So if you want to listen along, again, I guess if you're listening to this part, you've already listened to the whole interview. But if you want to hear it again and you want to watch the video, it'll all be up there from the madman himself. So for everybody out there, for Tony and for Face and Feels, remember, it's all about peace, love, and pro wrestling. Thanks everyone for listening. Faces and Feels is a DIY project created and edited in-house by me, Raffe Houston. You can show your support by following us on Instagram @FacesFeelsCast, Twitter @FacesFeelsCast, and Facebook @FacesFeelsCast. Or send us an email with topic suggestions or feedback to facesandfeels@gmail.com. And don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. Our banger theme is Loose Lips Sink Ships by the Thunder Vipers. Check it out on Spotify. And now hang around for a quick word from some friends of the show. Peace out.
Deathmatchworldwide.com the official online merchandise store that is only for deathmatch wrestling. Featuring official t-shirts from No Peace Underground, John Wayne Murdoch, Akira, Madman Pondo, Zona 23, Neil Diamond Cutter, G. Raver, Schlack, Necro Butcher, and many more. If you are a deathmatch wrestler, promotion, manager, or platform and are interested in joining the web store, send us an email to deathmatchworldwide@yahoo.com. Deathmatchworldwide.com for the violent feud.